Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Hey guys, welcome to our Tuesday Night Podcast. We are live, and hopefully we're going to get through this live show okay, because our guy Joe is on vacation right now, so I don't know what happened. I think we have
but we're gonna.
We've got a blank screen here. Maybe you guys can, Scott, you can give me a thumbs up. Can you hear me all right, Scott?
I can hear you, Todd, but I do have a blank screen or a black screen as well.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to try and get on that, but anyway, guys, just bear with us. Home sales are down across the country, guys. I can tell you, I have never seen anything like this. I've been in the housing business since 1989. I've never seen a housing market like this before. Prices are softening in markets across the U.S. Of course, there's a lot of debate about that. Depending on who you listen to, we're going to dive into some facts, though, tonight. And guys, you know, inventory has increased. I mean, housing inventory's gone up, but it's still way down, not enough to satisfy the demand. And I don't know, mortgage rates are going up. They seem to be skyrocketing. I think mortgage rates, I don't know, I believe that we may see 9% or close to 9% as we go into the new year. Of course, no one wants to hear that. We are over 8% on average. If you're not buying down any points right now across the country for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And anyway, so guys, tonight I'm sharing the screen besides with Melissa here, who is always on our Tuesday Night Podcast, mostly always. But I am with my great friend tonight. He is a fellow YouTuber, but more importantly, he is a realtor, and he is on the West Coast. And if you don't know who that is, folks, buckle up, strap in, and we got a hard-hitting, no pull, no punches, no sugarcoating, no rainbows, no sunshine, no lollipops, no unicorns, no puppy dogs. We're just going to give it to you and give it to you straight. Scott Walters in the house.
Hey, everybody. That was impressive, Todd. That was super impressive. Like, I got to admit, like, that was pretty much my whole opening intro to majority of my videos. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you guys. Always a pleasure to talk real estate. And it's the $1 million question, a polarizing topic, to say the least. The biggest asset class in the world was placed into another real estate bubble. Even as a real estate professional who benefits from this, I'm here to tell you. And early on I said, hey friends, this is bubble behavior. So, you know, proceed with caution, and that's what we have to do, I think, moving forward. And we're in an interesting time, like you opened the show with. You know, we're clearly now it's not rainbows and sunshine like maybe a couple of years ago when all mainstream media was just basically the red hot housing market. Great time to get in. Well, clearly the tune has changed. And so I'm excited to talk about that with you today, so we can hopefully not only discuss what happened, what it's like now, but more importantly, what's around the corner for us.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. Melissa.
Hello, Todd. Another Tuesday night. Hi, everyone. Scott, what is this? Time 3, 4, 5? I've lost track, but it's awesome to have you back again as a guest on our show. Everyone, I'll be fielding your questions and comments to Todd and Scott this evening, and don't hold back, because a lot of you are probably going to be maybe not completely surprised, but we don't want to be gloom and doom.
You know, it's interesting. Scott and I, we have been sort of, I don't want to use the word sounding the alarm, but we kind of, the interesting thing, and I think what you're going to enjoy tonight, guys, about our show is that, you know, we're kind of boots on the ground. There are a lot of people that talk about real estate, but very few out there, very few of the channels are actually conducting business on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, talking to the buyers and the sellers, understanding what the issues are, dealing with the lenders, the title companies, title issues. You know, everybody's kind of talking with part of being on the boots on the ground. Scott and I have, you know, the privilege of talking with other industry professionals. And I don't think anyone really wanted to admit the fact that the housing market was crashing, and, you know, and how that looks like in everybody's market is different. But it's clear to say that sales are way down. Affordability is out of, left field. People are really on the sidelines. I've heard more people say over the last couple of weeks that they're just going to sit it out and wait. We have an election year coming up, and we're going to talk about some of these issues. But Scott, as you know, we have Jay Powell. He speaks at this Jackson Hole symposium. It's an economic symposium, and obviously they talk about a lot of different things. And it just so happens that Jay Powell had his part to that, and where he was talking about inflation and what is going on with that, and still staying true to his 2% inflation. But Scott, really, I want to get your opinion. It's been a while since we kind of talked about this. I don't know if we ever spoke about what I'm about to ask you, but I mean, the Federal Reserve, it was actually designed, right, to stabilize our economy in some way, right? To regulate interest rates and sort of make sure we have market stability, job growth. And they do that. They have a couple different tools. One of them is interest rates. And, Jay Powell, every time he comes out, at least for the last 11 times that we've really paid attention to him, because I don't know if you've paid attention to Jay Powell like we have since March of 2022 when he started to jack the rates up. I don't know whether we, paid attention to 2019 when they were lowering rates well before the pandemic, and we'll talk about that. But Scott, what's your opinion on what the Fed has done to the market, and why don't you think? I mean, and I'm not just asking you this on a shallow level, but really, I mean, you and I sitting around a campfire, talking about why they didn't do this earlier. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that is exactly what happened. We mismanaged the stimulus package, and one of the key components, if not maybe the biggest component of the stimulus package, was what can we do for the housing market to keep it from crashing? Because initially, during lockdowns, everybody's at home, everything froze in place. And then, as part of the stimulus package, they made realtors essential workers. Following protocol, they dropped rates to stimulate buyers in this weird climate, because it was, at that time, lockdowns, people were still a little nervous about, what was going on. And so with that lack of inventory from that very fact that people did not want to open their doors and have me marching customers through their house, even with the mask on, we put incredible upward pressure on the housing market. So like you said, when it started to exhibit bubble behavior, which was within probably 3 to 6 months, I would say it was exhibiting bubble behavior in extreme fashion. And because all the stimulus that was in the economy, people are pouring into the markets, all markets, crypto, stock, and real estate, like a casino climate. It was a complete casino climate. So had we risen rates initially within the first year, maybe like this stuff, I mean, we just clearly we should have risen rates really much quicker than we did. So now, then it turned into that runaway train I always talk about. It left the station, it's off the rails, it's not coming back. So now the hat trick is how do we save it? But it already exhibited bubble behavior. So we've thrown ice water on this market. And so now we have to let the dust settle in terms of, okay, we've risen the rates, we've cooled the buyers off, but now it's people are in a standoff. Sellers and buyers are at a complete standoff. When I talk to sellers, they still want top dollar, and they can still get it. We're still in all-time highs. So it'll take a while for this cord to unwind. It's not good, because this is an interesting housing bubble, different than anything we've seen. It's not going to unwind overnight. It's going to take a little while. So, yeah, I mean, we should have risen rates much quicker than we did. We probably should have never initiated this stimulus package targeting the housing market the way we did, but we did, and that's how we got ourselves in the position we're in now. And so because real estate's local, all areas behave differently. Where I'm sitting, where you're sitting, still, and it's just the lack of inventory. There's still money out there that'll find its way into real estate. But I'm monitoring with my channel a lot of areas that are stuck on the market, chasing the market. An agent will go ahead and they'll let the seller list the price. Something I say, never let your seller list the price or set your price. Give them the comps. You're in a declining market. You might want to get in front of this. No, I want to be up here. My neighbors sold for this, whatever. But there's a lot of areas in the country right now that I'm seeing that are exhibiting crash behavior. Now, we are not in a crash yet. Make no mistake about that. But some cities are exhibiting that crash behavior, and that's why you're seeing a lot of these reported on recently, and I'm sure you've heard about it, these 1% down loans. I mean, these are, in essence, we are doing everything we can, the industry anyway, to try to keep this bubble going. But the Fed's committed to cool it off. Now, can we cool it off without crashing it is the million-dollar question.
You said a lot of really good points there, and I want to talk about when the seller, right now still wants 2021 prices for their home. And, we're not seeing quite nowhere near the activity that we saw back in 2021. What I'm talking about is, where the first, 5 hours of the house being on the market, it was a stampede and people were putting in, over appraised. It wasn't a matter of what the price was that you were offering. It got to the point that it only really mattered how much cash you had to pay over appraised value. So what we were doing is really looking at all the offers, and it's like, it doesn't matter what price they give. We knew it wasn't going to appraise. So even if they gave you the sky, we were looking at it, okay, well, you gave us the sky, but can you afford the sky in cash? And if they couldn't prove that they could afford the sky in cash, the seller cast that offer off to the side. So it was really just a matter of how much cash do you have to pay over appraised value? Because that's really what it came down to, right? So if we had a house that was just, say, $900,000, or I'll just make it $700,000, and we knew that the appraisal would be $700,000, and the offers were coming in at $800 or $850. The $850 meant nothing if they didn't have the $150,000 in cash. So I just had a situation. It was kind of interesting. I kind of smiled, but it in a professional manner, of course. It wasn't like a ha ha. But I had somebody that I went to for a listing appointment. And it was like 6 months ago when I first went and looked at the house. And they said to me, what do you think my house is worth? And at the time, I had a house not that far away that was listed at $1.2 million. And, they said, well, I want $1.2 million. And their house didn't have the features, and it, basically wasn't the same construction even. It was a big difference. And but anyway, so we didn't get the $1.2 million. We got $1.1 million, and the client was happy to get it because it was right when everything was starting to do a nosedive. But anyway, so here it is 6 months later, and the house is getting ready to go on the market. And, he wanted another $150,000 than what I had said the house was worth in the first place. And here we are 6 months later where it's a complete different ballgame. And it would probably be less. And anyway, so he found an agent to list it, and not only $150,000 over what he wanted than what I wanted to list it for. He's $250,000 over. And it's funny because the house is sitting. But my point is that, the sellers are still in that mind frame of, hey, I haven't done anything to my house. I haven't fixed anything, and I'm still hoping that I'm going to get that exuberance from a buyer, and it's just not happening. But getting back to, the Fed, I mean, Scott, a lot happened when the Fed kept rates at zero. And I want to kind of pull that up a minute. If we could just pull up the rate hikes, because for those of you that are watching that maybe aren't paying attention to this, and when I said to Scott, hey, look, we've had 11 rate hikes since March of 2022, and a lot of people don't understand that has never been done before. I mean, when we're looking at that kind of, type of rate hike, to slam the brakes on the economy. And in some ways, it hasn't worked, right? Because, here we are now. It started in like March of 22. You can see it there. And then as we were getting into the next couple of months of rate hikes, then we started seeing people were like, man, this is like serious. Like, the rates are really going up. Like, we didn't think that they would continue to raise the rates. So anyway, we look at something like that. But before we go on and talk further, Scott, about it, I want to pull up the next chart because a lot of people, I still don't understand why we were dropping rates even before the pandemic. So if we look here in 2019, and again, Scott, I don't know whether we were paying attention to this or not. I wasn't because the housing market was going crazy. I wasn't expecting coronavirus, which became COVID-19. And, we look at 2019, and in August, they dropped 25 basis points, September, 25 basis points, October, 25 basis points. And the Fed says that the reason they did that was because, they said in plain English, it actually says it on the site that's below here, you can't see it. The Fed was easing rates midway through a typical expansion to recession business cycle. In 2019, the U.S. and Chinese were in conflict over trade. This is before the pandemic. A so-called trade war, and the Fed was concerned that the conflict would harm the economy and push up unemployment rates. And then whammo, I think, didn't they say that COVID came from China? We were in conflict with them. We were in a trade war before COVID, ladies and gentlemen. Scott, what about the fact, when prices skyrocket, when banks can borrow at basically zero, isn't that the runaway train that they're looking for to be able to profit and raise prices? Look, the government gets paid tax money. The higher the sale, the prices. If we look at real estate, the higher the transfer, the higher the recordation fees. I don't know what it's like in California. It's expensive here to buy property, transfer recordation fees, a money grab. But what about property taxes? Man, this is like crazy. Did they want the prices to jack up higher than wage growth?
Well, you wouldn't think so, right? I'm not a rocket scientist, but I don't think you need to be one to figure this one out. So, yeah, pre-crisis, pre-lockdown, pre-stimulus, we were just all doing our thing as, everyday Americans working in the industry, working in the business. I've been own and manage mixed-use properties for many years, a lot of tenant placement, commercial and residential, as worked as a licensed real estate agent. I just think, like you said, it just comes down to now we found ourselves in a really sticky situation, and it's really tough. I think this is a really tricky time for the housing market because we've got a limited inventory environment. We've risen the rates in order to calm down the markets, but it hasn't calmed down prices yet because of the lack of inventory. So something's going to have to break to supply that inventory. Now there's so many Lehman moments. We talked about 2008. There's a lot of things like when we see loan applications at an all-time low, when you see U.S. savings rate at an all-time low, when you see U.S. credit card debt at an all-time high. Those are just a few for me that I go, the health and the fitness of the average American is not looking good right now. But I've talked to you about this before. I know once I sell you a home, it becomes all about the home, especially when I was showing homes during stimulus, and I knew I was competing with multiple offers, and I'd have to go to my buyer. Hey, listen, so they got other offers, and so I have to ask you a question. How much do you love this house? Oh, I really love this house, Scott. I really want it. Good, because your offer is going to have to reflect it. I had never had to have that conversation before. I don't even like paying asking price. I don't want my customers paying asking price. Over asking price was something I had never seen before. And that was the moment, the aha moment and I knew the phone ringing off the hook, the way it was primarily from internet, people just off the internet. My internet lead service went bonkers, where it used to be like, a very small percentage of the deals I did were off, the internet or the big websites. It was 90% fielding calls from these websites with people, suffering from FOMO. And so, it was my job to start protecting people. Now, I can talk a big game here on YouTube, of course. Somebody calls me and they want to see a house. I'm going to show them the house. I'm not going to start saying, it's going to crash. I'll see you in a few years. No, I'm going to show you the house, but we're going to have a conversation first. And I'm going to give you a straight talk. And I have other income, so I can walk away from a deal. I can put your needs before my own. And that's my message to anybody watching today. And it's going to be harder and harder to do that, to find an agent willing to earn your business later, if that's what it takes. So many agents got spoiled. If you weren't ready to buy and write over asking price offers, they didn't want to work with you. And that bothered me. I attend sales meetings every week, everybody. Biggest brokerage in the world. Every week. And let me just tell you, the conversation in these sales meetings isn't all rainbows and sunshine like it used to be. Like it was just like the land of milk and honey. People are nervous in these meetings now. Agents are dropping out. So the writing's clearly on the wall. We have a shift. Now, will some areas still get multiple offers, full asking price, maybe and over? Sure, but not as many as there were. A clear shift has taken place. So now it becomes what delivers the inventory. Well, we're seeing vacation rentals. I see them all the time reducing their prices. People bought in to vacation rentals as an investment during stimulus, and they're no longer garnishing their rents. That could easily supply us with some inventory. Commercial real estate. I don't know about you. I got 2 malls in my city. Both have anchor stores, big department stores. Gone. Malls without anchor stores in a city of wealth. That's bad. Commercial real estate. I could go on and on and on. So anybody, as much as I'd love to tell you this time is different, it's not. If anything, it's probably worse. Now, can we orchestrate the soft landing, a correction? That is the $1 million question. And anybody that says no crash risk here probably needs to sell you a house. Because there's always crash risk anytime the market exhibits bubble behavior. There's going to be crash risk. Can I guarantee a crash? No. Can I guarantee there won't be? No. It all becomes the percentage of likelihood, and we're all clearly interested in it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be watching today from somebody maybe not on mainstream media that works in the industry, that's boots on the ground, that's out there fighting for clients and giving straight talk. And that's all, that's my job, is to educate, inform, and entertain a little bit if I can. I'm a big personality. I'm passionate about what I do, but I'm more passionate about people primarily because in 2008 I bought near the top, about where we're at now. It started its decline. Actually, it was in 07 I bought. And it didn't end well for many Americans. There was a big foreclosure crisis. And if history tells us anything, we can't rule that out. It's going to take a miracle, in my opinion, to stop it. Can it be done? Sure, anything can be done. But, you cannot rule that out. So if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would probably have to say we're at minimum in recessionary levels of a downturn. I'm hoping we're not in a depression, based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah, Scott, I think a couple things, I think this is just the beginning. I hate to say it, and I don't, people say, you're doom and gloom. But if we just look at the facts, and you just covered a lot of them, wage growth has not kept up with, inflation, especially housing inflation. That's a big problem. When we have people that are paying over 50% of their pay in rent, or, now I just had somebody called me and said that their insurance premium went up like $1,700 from one year to the next, and their tax bill has gone up. And we're talking about, adding $400, $500 more to a monthly payment that people aren't prepared for. And I think what's happening is we have a carbon copy. It's a little bit different. Sure, it's not the same every downturn, but we have the same thing. The next president that takes office is going to be dealing with a big financial crisis from the pandemic, just the beginning of it, right? The fact that we overprinted, but now that the prices ran amok, and the problem that we have in the real estate industry is that these banks for the last several years have financed these overpriced houses into a large degree. And what happens is if we start, look, no one wanted to talk about home prices coming down. Jay Powell, we're going to play a clip here. Jay Powell said that housing inflation needs to come down. He mentions, and we're going to hear it from his mouth, pre-pandemic levels, okay? Fannie Mae is calling for a downturn, all right? These guys, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to say too much, but if you just listen to what they're saying, and saying that things are not right is what they're saying, and that a correction is needed. When Powell is talking about shelter inflation needing to come down, guys, you don't even realize what that means. People have been investing in real estate over the last 3 years, 4 years, spending so much money on their investment that their cap rates, their profit, let's just make it simple, they were settling for less and less profit. They did the method that they go in and buy the house and strip all the equity out, because that's what all the gurus were telling them to do. Strip the equity out, use the bank's money, right? And leverage that house. Well, now guess what? The Fed is talking about pushing those rent payments down, the amount of rent down. If we just even think about what that is going to create on the backside of this real estate, a problem for the banks, for the investors, we're going to see distressed properties that are going to hit the market. When we're talking about all the, ghost inventory, all the second homes that are out there that people invested in, that now utility costs are up, completely out of control, insurance is going up, taxes are going up, right? So if we're talking about adjustments of 4 or 5% in real estate on a $500,000 house that has zero equity, we're talking about sellers that can't sell. We're talking about homeowners that can't sell. You need 10% equity. You don't need 5% reduction in equity, 10% reduction in equity. You need 10% equity to pay commissions, transfer fees, recordation fees, moving costs, getting out from underneath of your mortgage. Let's play this clip of Jay Powell. It's only a little, maybe a minute here, but just take a listen.
In the highly interest-sensitive housing sector, the effects of monetary policy became apparent soon after liftoff. Mortgage rates doubled over the course of 2022, causing housing starts and sales to fall and house price growth to plummet. Growth in market rents soon and then steadily declined. Measured housing services inflation lagged these changes, as is typical, but has recently begun to fall. This inflation metric reflects rents paid by all tenants, as well as estimates of the equivalent rents that could be earned from homes that are owner-occupied. Because leases turn over slowly, it takes time for a decline in market rent growth to work its way into the overall inflation measure. The market rent slowdown has only recently begun to show through to that measure. The slowing growth in rents for new leases over roughly the past year can be thought of as in the pipeline, and will affect measured housing services inflation over the coming year. Going forward, if market rent growth settles near pre-pandemic levels, housing services inflation should decline toward its pre-pandemic level as well. And we will continue to watch the market rent data closely for a signal of the upside and downside risks to housing services inflation.
Guys, I want to tell you right now, if we see rent prices and house service prices go back to pre-pandemic levels, it's going to be great for some, disastrous for others. What do you think about that, Scott?
Well, yeah, they've really backed themselves into a corner. Really, he's politely saying we need to crash the housing market without saying it. They have voters to worry about and a lot of things. But, clearly the damage was done by the federal government, or at least policy, or at least leadership that instructed them in order to play with the markets. And they overheated the biggest asset class in the world, the U.S. housing market. If we lose it, we will lose everything. But yeah, like you said, I mean, he basically said they need to crash the housing market. If we're going to go back to pre-pandemic levels at any metric, that's going to be damage. And so, especially the people that bought in the hype, because the people that a lot of times I always say, like I was about to say, when I sell you a house, it becomes all about the house. You don't get hurt necessarily when you buy; you get hurt when you sell. So if you bought at the height of a bubble, if you can make your payment, maybe you're okay, but you're now handcuffed by your house. Why? Because you can't sell it for what you paid for it. But you're like, hey, whatever, real estate cycles, it always comes back. That's what I told myself in the last bubble. I would have had to wait almost 20 years for it to climb out of that. And in a downed economy, because by 2024, predictions are we're going to be in recession. And, that's going to be hard for people to keep up with their cost of living. And like you were saying, in a sales meeting today, we were talking about insurance companies now, finding insurance companies that will insure. There's not as many out there, and they're charging more to do it. I mean, that's just the cost to carry a home is really, really big. And so like you said, even investors, we talked about the Airbnb and vacation rentals. Those are I believe, the biggest at risk, because they were charging big numbers for these things, but it was seasonal, right? So they were getting these huge, for long-term rentals, a lot of people piled in, a lot of these BlackRocks and Blackstones and institutional buyers bought up a lot of those as well. So they're going to start dumping homes instantly if the returns aren't there. So, I mean, I guess back to Jay Powell and his statement, for me, he's just, kind of a puppet, and he's up there just trying to relay these messages as diplomatically as possible without causing panic. But what I hear there is they're going to crash the markets if they're in fact going to do what he just said.
Well, Scott, it doesn't come any more direct. I mean, they certainly know, they're the ones pulling the strings. So they're the ones that have the control over doing this. But here's what I think. And you say that the BlackRocks are going to sell their real estate. I think they're standing around waiting to buy it. So here's the problem. Mom and pop landlords cannot sustain a downturn and a loss of profitability for long. I mean, it's only so much that they can do. They're not going to be able to borrow money, because when the ship is sinking, right, and your P&Ls are going down, your financial statements look terrible, because you're not making money. They're not going to lend you more money, so you have no other choice but to sell. Right. So if you can't get the rents, if they are putting rent controls in places, we're seeing it now, and they're making it ways for tenants to not have to pay, and making it harder for landlords to evict them. And landlords already mom and pops don't make a whole lot of money. I know, contrary. I've been a landlord for 25 years. You just said you're a landlord. I can tell you, what you hope for is that over the long haul of owning the property, that the loan eventually gets paid down, right, or paid off. You're not profiting this ginormous amount of money unless you're, see some of these people on Instagram. They're going to be the ones that fall. Hey, check out my Lamborghini. I'm making $1.5 million a month. Making money off of renters. That your ship has sailed, man. Let me tell you something, right? What we're looking at is most landlords are making $400 or $500 a month above their costs if they're lucky, right? You add that up, that's at best $6,000 a year. If a tenant turnover, that tenant's been in there 2 or 3 years and leaves, you are taking that $20,000, dumping it right back into your property, painting, new carpeting, new flooring, new appliances, boom, gone. $5,000, $8,000 in appliances, right? If you're getting not even that expensive of appliance, right? Something that is new, right? Basic and new. Everything's so expensive. What I think is going to happen here is that all this Wall Street money that's on the sidelines, when they start putting this squeeze to the mom and pops and they're forced to sell, when these Airbnb, they're forced to sell. Look, Wall Street money, man, they're not playing with their money. They're playing with investor money. And we just watched a huge influx of Wall Street buy into the housing market. Powell just announced that prices need to come down to pre-pandemic levels. And you have all these Wall Street, investors dumping money into, come on, Berkshire dumping money into housing, these new home construction. What do they know, right? They're the ones that are pulling the strings. These special interest groups are the ones that are putting these politicians. Do you think they care about consumers, or do you think they care about the ones that are helping them to get into office in the first place? I mean, it makes no sense. Well, it makes perfect sense, but I think what's going to happen, Scott, you said Wall Street's going to start selling houses. I think they're going to start buying.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right. So there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines right now from these heavy hitters, but a lot of them drank the economic Kool-Aid. They went in and gambled in these markets. They're very exposed. So, I don't know if Blackstone, BlackRock is necessarily one of those, but to make no mistake about it, we saw more investor involvement in this bubble than ever in history. So they're in there. Now they might start dumping homes, get heavy in cash, and wait for the real crash. Who knows? I know as a longtime landlord myself, I weathered the last storm with my commercial. Took a huge hit in the last '08 bubble, and I had missing tenants for months. No fun. And you see what's different in today, like you said, there's less mom and pops. And now what we have is a lot of companies that do property management software services to run comps and get the most out of your rental. And I always tell people, if you're selling your house or you're renting your house, I have one rule, and I use it myself. What I do if I have a space for rent, or I'm going to sell a property, I find out who my competition is, and I beat them. And then I keep my tenants. I give them a little bit of a deal. They stay put. If I'm price gouging or I'm coming on the market too high with my property when I'm selling it, how many people are racing over to see my rental or property for sale? Not many, especially in this climate. Now, maybe a couple of years ago in the euphoria, but so this is the big challenge now. So yeah, we're going to have a lot of pain in the markets if it's just the writing's on the wall now. The writing is on the wall. The housing market bubble is over. We've crested. Now it's how far will it go? And so it's not the stock market. It's not the crypto market. It will take a while for this cord to unwind. And we've got a lot of headwinds. I keep coming back to 2008 because it was pretty much the ninja loan or whatever, very economically driven. But now we have political and social headwinds to contend with. It's like the three-headed monster right now in these markets. So I mean, it's clear, and we put the market into a bubble. And now we're trying to unwind it, and based on what you just played me, that's going to be catastrophe if we're going back to pre-pandemic.
Had you heard that, Scott, before now? Had you heard that?
I don't think I'd heard the actual clip, but I had heard or read the report.
Yeah. The landlords that are selling right now, by the way, and I have a couple of them that are ready to hit the market, they're stuck in this. So they evicted tenants. I have one that just evicted tenants, hadn't paid them in 4 months. And by the way, it was a voucher tenant as well. So they had a portion to pay. They were getting the voucher money, but wasn't getting the tenant's portion. They evicted, whatever. It was a mutual thing. They didn't actually go through the courts. But anyway, the place is, oh my gosh, it's destroyed. The bathrooms, there's, it's a 2.5 bath. The bathrooms are destroyed. They need new vanities. The floors are destroyed from water damage. The ceilings are destroyed from water damage because the tubs were overflowed. There's holes where it looks like people put their fist through, the 6-panel colonial doors. This is not a very old place. And I mean, it's trashed. It's a townhouse, and it's probably at best a $400,000, perfectly ready to go townhouse. Of course, Zillow is listing it as like maybe 412. Ridiculous. That's another story. We could talk about that. But, 412,000. My client is like, well, I should be able to get 412,000. I'm like, okay, let's get a price on fixing the house up to get it to that point. A house not too far away sold for $385,000. It's same thing, end unit townhouse. It was pristine. It was rehabbed. Looks fantastic. $55,000 was the estimate to renovate the house to get it to that point, right? So now he's like, what do I do? I mean, can't we just put it on the market like it is and get close to 412? Like, nobody's going to give you 412. I mean, it's like La La Land, right? And so we had this situation where now distressed properties coming on the market, and you had mentioned something about getting in front of it. Buyers are smart now, man. They're like, they're looking at interest rates. They're looking at, their money disappearing out of their bank accounts. They're looking at their friends that made mistakes and are telling them that they wish they hadn't bought the house because now they're spending $25,000 for a roof replacement, or they're putting $20,000 into a new heating and air system, whatever. So they're like, wait a minute. Oh man, I'm glad I dodged that ball, right? So, here we are in a situation. You said, Scott, that these sellers need to get in front of it. You remember what happened in the peak of 2000. You, my friend, we've been in this business long enough. We know we've been here before. What happens is you hit that peak, right? And everybody thinks that, the market, and they don't want to listen that the market has crashed. We don't have the over appraised gap addendums that we saw, a year and a half ago. We don't have, the flood of, buyers like we had a year and a half ago. Things have changed drastically. It's hard to put a thumb on whether prices have gone down because people look at the home price and they see that the price sold for more than the list price. But what they don't stop and realize is that that is still less than what it would have sold for back in the peak, right? So agents are educating, smart agents are educating, smart sellers are listening to get in front of this to where they price it just underneath of where it should be, the smart ones, not $250,000 more than what it should be. Because let me tell you something, when that arrow starts going down, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, when you sit on the market for 30 days, 45 days, and the arrow starts going down and you see the red on the MLS, not the green, like price increase, you see, well, let's do a price correction. You can call it what you want, but the public's like, yeah, now we got you where we want you because your price is declining and going down because you realize you overpriced the market. Some call it greed. Some call it whatever. Inexperienced agents, right? Letting their clients do whatever they want to do. But you're right. You have to get in front of it because when the market's declining, you want to get just in front of that because it's hard to determine if the house is going to be less tomorrow than worth less tomorrow than what it is today. What's that price, right? So when we see Powell mentioning these things, one other article I want to pull up here, because this is huge, guys. This is huge. Fannie Mae has published a correction it was on Yahoo Finance, this article, but Fannie Mae published a correction that they don't think it's going to be quite as bad as they expected. And again, the devil's in the details here, guys. How do you analyze this data? But they are saying here, and this is important stuff. Melissa's laptop, as big as it is, I mean, she hogs the whole thing half the time. So I gotta go to my notes here. But here's what I want to look at here, okay? Here we go. While Fannie Mae doesn't expect national home prices to crash, of course not. Why would we alarm America and then start, really seeing it fall out? The firm's latest forecast does have national home prices coming down a bit more. If Fannie Mae's forecast model comes to fruition, home prices would end December 2024 down 3.4% from December of 2023. 22. Why didn't they say March or April of 2022? Right? Because we already know the home prices have declined since then. Now, you might say, not in my town, not in my town. With all due respect, guys, it's a hard metric to put your finger on, but it's a declining market. It's not like it was, and it took years. The housing market peaked in 2006. For some sellers, it took the peak of 2022 to get what they worth, get the money that they bought it for in 2006. Just got to tell you, I'm not wrong. Here's the thing. 2006 to 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, when we saw a complete bloodbath and hundreds of thousands of foreclosures being bundled up and sold to Wall Street, it took years for that to happen. We are talking about just over a year ago, they started raising interest rates. That's why I'm telling you, this is just the beginning. Now we're hearing Jay Powell start talking about pre-pandemic prices, which would be catastrophic by all stretch of imagination, would be catastrophic because we're talking about 40, 50% price growth since before the pandemic. And I'm talking about rental rates as well. And then here we are now, Fannie Mae is saying prices, ladies and gentlemen, are not going up, they're coming down. So when we have these entities talking about this, we need to pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you're right. That's so. When Fannie Mae is saying that they're basically, we have housing market declines and they're revising their forecasts and blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's basically a tick or two. It's not enough to notice, but the reality is, it's kind of like we went back to, that what they're saying is, hey, the bubble's over, it's crested, and it's reverse course.
What did Bernanke say? What did Bernanke say? What did Bernanke say before the housing market crashed in 2008?
Yeah, right, exactly.
He said it would never happen.
Right, same exact thing. And I think that's really what we have to understand here, friends, is, we're going to continue to have people tell you no crash risk here as it's crashing. They're going to tell you that right to your face. They will ride this thing like the Titanic. And so it's really our job to kind of, not be, like you said, too doom and gloom, not two rainbows and sunshine, kind of a level-headed realist right in the middle, and just understand, like, this is what we currently have to deal with. The Fed telling us we got a bit of a reset, pre-pandemic levels, ouch. Fannie Mae saying, we have recorded declines. And like you said, see, real estate's local, and our people are becoming much smarter. I always tell my clients, like, Melissa, if you're my client, what I'm telling you is, I'm saying, Melissa, we're going to look at houses today, but I'm going to tell you something, Melissa. Don't fall in love with anything I show you, because you might have to walk away if we're writing offers. Unless you want to get into a bidding war. Melissa, do you want to get into a bidding war? Of course not. I don't want you to do that.
And you have to be careful. It's like if you get a couple offers, you have to be really careful. Agents before would go back and say, put your highest and best foot forward. We got multiple offers situation due. All offers due on Thursday, and it's Tuesday. And then half, if not all of their offers say, I'm not getting into this and I'm out. And then all of a sudden they're looking at, we got one offer now. We had 4, but now we have 1 because the other ones were like, I'm not playing this game. Before, Scott, we get in, I want to take some questions, but I do want to play one more clip from the Fed, because I think this is important. And so let's just listen up for another couple seconds to the Fed, and then we're going to take your comments and questions.
Bear with me here. I got to go over. There we go.
You got to go back to your link, right?
Yeah, I
and
just
hit
need
play.
to actually go over to...
All right, so while Melissa's doing that, we're going to take your questions. Guys, we appreciate you spending your Tuesday evening with us. And Scott Walters, As I said, he's a great friend of mine. He has a YouTube channel as well. If you guys could show him some love, you could cruise over. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe to his channel. And, like I said, he's boots on the ground too. So here we go. Let's
further
play
drag in the pipeline. Beyond these traditional sources of policy uncertainty, the supply and demand dislocations unique to this cycle raise further complications through their effects on inflation and labor market dynamics. For example, so far, job openings have declined substantially without increasing unemployment, a highly welcome but historically unusual result that appears to reflect large excess demand for labor. In addition, there is evidence that inflation has become more responsive to labor market tightness than was the case in recent decades. These changing dynamics may or may not persist, and this uncertainty underscores the need for agile policymaking. These uncertainties, both old and new, complicate our task of balancing the risk of tightening monetary policy too much against the risk of tightening too little. Doing too little could allow above target inflation to become entrenched and ultimately require monetary policy to wring more persistent inflation from the economy at a high cost to employment. Doing too much could also do unnecessary harm to the economy. As is often the case, we are navigating by the stars under cloudy skies.
There we go.
All right. So here we go. They want to get us back to 2% inflation. We know we've had, and guys, we'll drop that link below if you want to watch it. It's 14 minutes of Jay Powell. But basically, what he's saying here is that economic growth has shown signs of slowing, right? And that payroll job growth has slowed significantly. This is not going in the right direction. Payroll job growth slowed significantly. That means that wages are coming down, right? That's a fancy way of saying it. Average work week, he says, has slowed prior to pandemic levels. People simply don't have the work. Here's the part that I want to bring out here, guys. He says that nominal wage growth has slowed, but real wage growth has increased due to lower inflation. I don't know. You feeling lower inflation? I'm not feeling lower inflation. I'm paying as much for fuel, gasoline than I was, it seems like a year ago. Groceries, the prices are ridiculous. I'm not feeling it. He's saying that, hey, wage growth is increasing in one way. It's slowing in one way, but increasing in other ways, because even though you're making less money and working less hours, you're actually saving more money because inflation has come down. I'm not buying that either, right? But here's the point. He talks about wage jobs being eliminated. So in other words, we may not have 50,000 job postings, but that's because the employers don't need them anymore. Are we on Earth? I mean, where is this happening? Because everywhere I go, none of them have enough employees. So if they're not hiring anymore, it's not because they don't need the people. It's because they can't afford the wages, right? Because things are backing off. Their costs are high. Your supply chain's still terrible. What Tyson Foods just shut down a bunch of warehouses. I mean, do we need food? How's that happening? So anyway, let's take some questions. I just wanted to point that out because you have to read between the lines. I'm not buying this crap that we're being fed. And, I'm sorry. I know every single day people are struggling right now. They have no money in the bank. Their credit card bills they're not paying them off. Over 50% of the people have said that they go month to month without paying them off. $1.2 trillion in credit card debt the first time in America. 24% is the average credit card finance charge in America. People are financing their groceries, financing their gas in their cars. They're putting their utility bills on their credit card. They're not paying them down. Where is this soft landing? What it is bailouts. We're still bailing out people's mortgages. We're paying, God only knows how much, we're continuing to go into fiscal debt. And, eventually we need to wake up from it. But let's take some comments. I know we got some super super chats
We
here.
do.
And Melissa calls them super cash.
cash. Yeah, we're going to start with
We
this one
appreciate
right
you guys.
here.
Let's go ahead and take some comments and
Yep.
questions.
If I said out of 1491 rental applicants, I've collected data on the last, I think is what they're saying, 3 years, will experience a minimum decrease of 18% in disposable income after only the expense of rent is subtracted from their gross income. Also went on to say, thank you very much for your super
Yes,
chat.
thank you so much.
How do you think this type of overnight loss of disposable income would impact the housing market if this were to be a case on a national level?
Scott?
Well, I'm not sure I completely understood the question, but I believe it would have a negative impact on the housing market if I'm hearing it correctly.
Yeah. So talking about getting all these rental applications in, right? And their disposable income has just been disintegrated, right? And I think this is on a national level. I think when we're looking at, and this is a big sampling here, 1,491 rental applications. That's a good sampling, right? When we're looking at that, and we see 18% of disposable income. That's where we're starting to see where tenants are in debt up to their eyeballs. I'll give you a real life scenario. I had a client of mine call me up yesterday, and he said, "Todd, I have a question for you. I have this client. We'll call him Joe." Friend Joe, and Joe wants to move into this apartment with a friend of his that he's known for 30 years. Now, this friend is moving, but is stuck in a lease. So this friend is moving out of state, and here we are. I said, okay, so tell me what's going on. Well, my friend is still going to pay half the rent. I'm thinking, okay, your friend's moving. He's going to have a new rent payment. He's suckering you in to taking over this lease. You got to go down to the rental office, fill out the application. You're going to go on the lease. You're stuck in this lease. So as I was asking the questions, going on and on and on, I said, well, if your friend doesn't pay and you kick your friend out, you can't sublet according to your lease, and which means get somebody else in there just without telling anybody, the rental office. You need an applicant. And I said, but let's say they kick them out. Can you afford to rent on your own? No. Okay. Are you willing to take on another roommate for one of the bedrooms? And he said, well, it's only a 1-bedroom. I'm like, whoa, what? Like, wait a minute. Your friend has a 1-bedroom apartment, and you're gonna move in, he's gonna move out, he's gonna pay half, and you're gonna pay half. If you have to go get another roommate to pay your rent because you can't afford the whole rent, you're going to tell the roommate that they have to share a bed with you or that they're going to sleep on the couch? This is a disaster. This is a terrible idea. But my point is that people don't have enough money to handle a rental on their own. They have to be hitched, or they have to have friends, or they have to this is happening all across America, guys. I mean, we're looking at 2-bedroom apartments have an average rent of $2,200 a month, right? So maybe you can find a 1-bedroom for $1,700 a month, right? Add that up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's what it comes back to for me as somebody who's placed, and I know you have as well, many tenants. And I was started to talk about this earlier. I'm very hands-on. I've handled tenant placement services for a lot of my clients. Handpicking high-quality tenants is an art form, and a software company or an app can't do that for you. If you're judging somebody purely on paper, which is getting harder and harder to do, to find qualified tenants, and that's why I always say find out who your competition is and beat them. If you're just going with the rest of the market, this is the comps, these are the going rates, I would rather get every available person in town and then hand pick a high quality tenant and know that I've got them slightly under market. So they're really happy that they're like, wow, I'm so happy I got this place. I'm getting a deal and whatever. And plus, if I have other tenants to think about, tenant mix is also super important. So, there's a lot of dynamics. I always tell people, it's not as important to own where you live. it's just important to own. I would rather see you just rent for life and go buy investment properties and remain. Because once I sell, that's what I was trying to say earlier, is once I sell your house, it's all about the house. Every weekend you're at Home Depot or Lowe's and you're painting and that garden. You don't have time to do anything else. That house owns you. So, you got to really have your head on straight when you're doing this. But in terms of our super chat, thank you, by the way, love you, brother. Is it's harder and harder to find high quality tenants, especially if your rental is priced at the top of the market.
Yeah.
And I just
also,
wanted to
we really do
add
appreciate
to that. Austin went on. He did another super chat. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you so much. We
The
appreciate it.
18% decrease in disposable income is what is projected by the data I collected once student loans resume in October. That will crush economy.
Yeah, I mean, and look, and these the best thing the students could have been doing through the last 3 years is paying their loans interest free, right? Most of them, I think, or at least a lot of them, stopped paying altogether, and because the interest stopped accruing for the last 3 years. So now here we are in September, interest started accruing this month, and then in October 1, these student loan payments are back to being due on a timely basis. So, but you're right, a lot of these students, or a lot of this debt, and by the way, the average default in student loans comes at about the age of 35 years old, is the national average on that. So what happens is now these people have been out for a while. This isn't, the people that are defaulting on their student loans, they're not just getting out of school. They have been paying for them for a while, and I know there's a lot of complexities with that, and I don't want to go down that road today. If you've watched my channel, you know that I'm not for bailouts, including student loan bailouts, including, business bailouts, Wall Street bailouts, any bailouts. I don't believe in bailouts. It's just my personal opinion. Thank goodness I don't run the country. But anyway, for the people that like the bailouts. Well, my point here is that it's unaffordable, right? So thank you so much, Austin, for that. And let's take some more questions. I think we have some more super chats.
Yeah, we did have another super chat right
Charles?
here. Yep, there we go. Charles, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charles.
Houses I'm looking to buy that were going for $450,000 are now going on the market for $350,000, and the ones at $350,000 are either going for $300K or less.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it too. I know, Scott, you're in a different market out there on the West Coast, man, and you're on the beach, and you're in the land of the milk and honey. Apparently, I don't know where they get the money for this real estate in California, but it always astonishes me. We are also in a very stable market. We see probably the least effective downturn in most markets because, hey, the government is here in Maryland, and that's where the money flows out of Washington, D.C. We're close to D.C. So, of course, it's very stable. I mean, Washington pays, why buy a toilet in a government building for $300 when you can buy for $850, and so for the same toilet. So, they like to spend money. They like to give people a lot, and the people can afford it. The average median income in and around D.C. and Maryland here is $90,000 a year, far exceeds the national income. Believe me, plenty of people are making a lot more money than that. And we also have a big insurance presence, and we know there's no short of financial pay with these insurance executives. So we do have a very stable economy. However, with that being said, I think Baltimore is struggling, right, in many ways. But really, when we look at the crash of 2008, we were one of the slowest states in the entire country to come back. Right? Vegas came back before we did here in Maryland. Like I said, people that bought in 2006, many of them had to wait until 2021, 2022 to even get out of their home from what they paid back in the peak of 06. But anyway, that's another story. But yes, across the country, I'm talking to people that are in Texas that are seeing price declines. One of my clients went and bought like a 2,500 square foot house in one of the suburbs in Dallas for $312,000. You ain't getting that around here. I mean, I could tell you that, right? So, you know, we are seeing across the country where prices are coming down.
Couple questions regarding Zillow at the top of the show. This one came in.
Zillow.
Yeah.
I love Zillow.
Todd, I've noticed many properties on Zillow stay in pending status for months prior to returning either to for sale or off-market status. What is behind the extended pending state?
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything, right? So, I mean, pending, and typically you've got active under contract where the seller still wants to have foot traffic and still wants to, you know, take backup offers, things like that. At least in our MLS, which is the Mid-Atlantic, Bright MLS. And I don't know about you, Scott, but then we have pending status, which is kind of like the seller's like, you know what, we don't want any more, you know, people coming through. We're just going to try and stick with this offer. What we're seeing right now is most of the contracts that are coming through are with home inspections. And I just had a little debate with an agent, you know, and Scott, we're going to talk about agents tonight. And before you run, I know you know we've got a hard stop with you, but before you go, I want to dive in and see if you have the guts to answer some of the questions that I have for you. I know you do, but I just figured I'd do a little jab there. But anyway, the agent said to me, "Hey, I got an offer for your client, but the great thing is I got him to waive the inspection." Okay, let's have it. What's the offer? So offer comes in. I called the agent. I said, I thought you waived the inspection. They said, well, we did. I said, well, it's not waived. The contract says they want an inspection and I have an inspection addendum. She said, yeah, but it's as is with the right to terminate. I'm like, that's still a freaking inspection. That means that you can walk after you. I mean, what the heck? So now I have to decide. We've got two offers. One's a traditional inspection with the right to negotiate. This is the new fancy terminology. We've got an inspection with the right to negotiate or an inspection with the right to terminate. Well, what do you want? You think you're doing the seller a favor by saying I want an inspection with the right to terminate? That seller may want to fix stuff that you recommend. And why would you suggest that your buyer just spend all that money for inspections and walk away without the option to negotiate? Doesn't make sense to me. I'm sure you have it the same there, my friend. Anyway, did I answer the question? Why would it be in pending status?
Yeah, why would it be in pending status?
Well, it could be because they're waiting on repairs. They could be waiting on, I'll give you one. In Baltimore City, we've got a lot of this going on. The people didn't pull permits to get the work. They've completely renovated a house but didn't pull one permit. And then all of a sudden they had a home inspection. And I can give you an exact example. The home inspector, the rehabber rehabbed the entire house, didn't pull one permit. Now, all of a sudden, they do their home inspection. The home inspector says, oh, the service cable that's coming down from Baltimore Gas and Electric, from the bug at the top where the electric connects to the house, that cable that runs down to the meter, the casing is completely frayed, cracked, dangerous. We want that replaced, right? So you know what the seller did? The seller pulled a permit to get that service cable replaced. The electrician comes out. They do the rough in. He calls in for his inspection, the final, to be able to get Baltimore Gas and Electric to connect it to the meter. And the inspector comes out and says, "Wow, this whole house is renovated." Gets on his computer and says, I don't see one permit pulled in here. He flagged him, charged him $1,000. He's been trying to get it straightened out for months. Finally, the buyer's like, I want my money back for the inspections because this is disastrous and I've spent a couple $1,000. That could be one of the reasons why the house is still pending and then goes back on or off the market. In this case, the house was pulled off the market after a couple of months, and it's still not fixed. Mm-hmm. The issues aren't corrected.
There was another question about Zillow. Question, Todd. What is your thought on Zillow 1% down payment?
Well, I mean, a lot of these, companies and Zillow, I'm not really familiar with this, but I know, Quicken just did this, 1% down. They have a grant that they came out with, this Rocket Mortgage. I didn't know that Zillow is doing this. They probably are. I just don't know about it, but I'm sure it is a grant program that is very similar to the one that Rocket Mortgage did. And basically, they're enticing buyers to jump in this market is what they're doing with no money down, very little money down. I think it's a disaster.
Well, it's a warning. It's a warning sign for sure, right, Todd? I mean, because let's look at Zillow. Who's Zillow? Well, they're a search engine, right? They scrape MLSs all across the nation, regurgitate it, and try to sell clicks to agents that they have somebody interested in a tour. And so that's how they started. Then they entered the iBuyer space. The iBuyer companies, Open Door and Zillow, they only do well in a real estate bubble. Outside a bubble, they're done. What's happened to these iBuyer programs? They've been terminated. In fact, with Zillow in spectacular fashion, right? So now, like you said, because of affordability, we're introducing, they've realized we can't sell homes, buy and sell. Our algorithm won't help us do that anymore because it only works in a skyrocketing bubble environment. It's become too volatile for our algo to be able to chase that prices adequately enough to turn a profit. It's too risky. So now let's get into the lending program. Let's write some shaky loans. Let's write loans to borrowers. If you don't have 1%, I mean, if you only have 1% to put down on a house, let me just tell you something. You shouldn't be buying a house. I mean, that's just number one. So this is another grasp at straws for somehow Zillow to make money off of loans. This is a housing bubble that can't sustain itself. This is basically ninja loans. For all intents and purposes, it's another version of it. Everybody will say this time is different. It will be different. It will be different. It's never going to be the same thing. Each bubble had a different cause and byproduct, but the ultimate ending was always the same. So the 1% down, for me personally, like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the answer to the bubble. Maybe this is what saves the whole housing market is Zillow and their 1% program. But what I see is clearly they're trying to generate business and try to find a way to lend money. And these are going to be shaky loans. So if you only have 1% down, you're a risky borrower, in my opinion. So for me, that's another red flag, friends. They're only trying it in Arizona as a pilot program. So we'll see if it works or not. But it's certainly something that isn't indicative of a healthy housing market needing a 1% down program. That's just unaffordability because like we've talked about before, we're stuck now with bubble pricing and a risen interest rate environment. So there's only one thing that's going to happen now. Pricing will have to come down because even if you take interest rates back down, we haven't conquered inflation yet. So then we're back where we started in worse shape. So the Zillow 1% down program is the sign of desperation, in my opinion.
Scott, it has to be a subprime loan program if they're not putting money towards something. There has to be a grant. I mean, you have to put down more. The only loan program that is close to 1% down that I know about right now is VA, right, which is 0% down. So, I mean, I don't know of any programs that, unless they have a grant attached to it, where the mortgage company or the lender is actually kicking in money for something, however they do it. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a lender, but I can tell you, I think Zillow's ship has sailed. And I can tell you one of the things I'm so disgusted about Zillow right now, and I think that, and this is just my personal opinion, but I think that they're part of the problem. I think they're part of the reason why the housing market was a bubble. They couldn't trust their own algorithm that America put so much weight into. They scraped American home buyers so bad. They had them all enticed. They bought all of the, Trulia, right? They're still in their buying game, right? These bureaucrats, they developed this Zestimate program where they're going to essentially appraise houses, right? This system was so broken, it cost Zillow, wherever the money came from, I guess it was investor money, $770 million by their own account, right? That they said, hey, look, our own algorithms were wrong and we overpaid for houses. They said that. Where does that come into everybody else? Okay, if they overpaid based on their own algorithm and bought houses and lost $770 million, what did that do for everybody else that relied on Zestimate as a buyer and seller? And it was gospel. Okay, it was gospel. I can remember, listing houses for $50,000 because my client thought it would be a great idea, and they were right. $50,000 more than what the comp showed and what Zestimate showed. And all of a sudden, I listed the house the next day. The Zestimate matched my list price, just like that. Went up $50,000. I can list account after account after account. So what happens now is when sellers are looking at the Zestimate, what sellers in America, my gosh, how many hundreds of millions of people log on to Zillow or Trulia or the like to start their home buying process. Now, America starts home buying on Zillow, right? Now, all of a sudden, they're looking at home prices according to the Zestimate, and they're saying, well, we're going to have to overpay that because if the average is 10% more than what the house is worth is what America, and that's where things were averaging, then we're going to have to go 10% over Zestimate, right? Or whatever the seller feels that Zestimate is worth other than what the agent is showing them that the comps are worth. I've spoken with, dozens of appraisers. I have a friend of mine who's an appraiser that teaches appraisers, and they're like, good grief, like where the heck did these prices come from? So, how do you take a home price appreciation that has never happened, 20-some%, even leading up to 2006? How do you take home price appreciation in some markets more than 20% price growth year over year in 2 years time period and finance that?
Yeah,
How do you do it?
Yeah, it's really tricky, like you said. Because the Zestimate gives you, I always look at it, has an upper, mid, and lower value range. And so Zillow doesn't know if the house is a wreck or staged to perfection, but so it doesn't know how to do that. So buying and selling homes, it just wasn't working. But the other thing to understand is, I always say this, is with Zillow, its Zestimate you got to be really careful with their Zestimate. Like a lot of people during the run-ups, they looked at their house and their value like, oh my God, honey, look, our house that went up so much. They had the wealth effect created and they felt rich on paper, but it's unrealized wealth. Unless you sell, it's just dead equity. So Zillow, in fact, hurt more people than it helped because it created the wealth effect for millions and millions of people across America that happened to see their Zestimate on what their house was worth, and they went out and spent differently than they would have had they not seen that.
Scott, you're an agent. I'm an agent, right? Okay. We know agents, and I want to talk a little bit about this. I know we still have some questions to answer, but I want to ask you some hard questions about some agent questions. Because we deal with these agents all the time, and we've got two big lawsuits that NAR is happening. You're probably sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, I do not want to talk about this," and here he goes, you're diving right into these NAR lawsuits because real estate's about to change. People here we are talking about the housing market, and the agents are upset because the house sales are down. A lot of this is, comes as a shock to some of these agents that haven't been in the business, even some that have been in the business. The bigger looming, effect here is that, we've got plaintiffs in a lawsuit that is probably going to become a wide swath of, involved brokerages throughout the country. NAR's at the spearhead. We have the Department of Justice is reprobing and opening up things, saying that there's potential anti-Sherman trust violations in the way that things are being done and at the top at NAR. And these are the things that are under scrutiny, and it's going to open up, regardless of whether the plaintiffs win or lose. I think it's going to change real estate. And I tell you, and being on both sides of it, looking on both sides of the fence, and being somebody like yourself that has a YouTube channel and deals with consumers, we love our consumers, we love our audience. We're trying to bring them the best information, but we're also hearing equally their comments, good and bad, that we can't push our nose up to. I told somebody the other day, I'm a real estate broker that's probably launched one of the largest independent studies that any other real estate broker has in the country by doing a YouTube channel and talking about things that aren't popular amongst real estate brokers or agents to talk about. And I hear the consumers directly responding to me, sending emails, calling on the phone, and commenting on our show. But here's the thing. How many agents that were listing houses or helping buyers probably went by Zestimate instead of doing their own due diligence or homework on the MLS? I mean, this is how trusted this platform was. Right? It's difficult to do comparables. You have to dive into the computer system and actually work. You've got to figure it out. You've got to dive in and look at features of the house and, how long it was on the market. Call the agents and say, how many people were interested in it. Look, you only took one buyer. Did you have a whole bunch of buyers that were disappointed that the house didn't sell? I'm getting ready to put a house on the market right down the street. Let me try and read the market and get real data. Well, no, actually, we only had 2 offers instead of, oh my gosh, everybody's jumping for joy in this neighborhood, right? Do you think that was an issue? Do you think agents were relying on Zestimate more than they were their own MLS?
Oh, no issue there at all. Of course it was an issue. I mean, agents got spoiled and they got lazy, my friends, and all they're interested in doing basically is grandstanding on social media. And one of the hardest ones I have stomaching, if I have to see another Instagram post of, I'm so happy that I got my clients off market over asking price with 3 over asking price offers, is grandstanding. But the realities are, like when I learned in real estate, I learned from a grinder. I found the highest producing agent, $1 billion agent in town, the Rodeo Drive of the area, and this guy was a grinder. I almost quit the business because of this guy. He was an animal. But yeah, we would have to, when I went to a listing appointment, we had a full listing package, right? You have a full package with recent sales, comparables, photos of the sales. I mean, you've put it under the microscope to determine what your suggested price opinion is. And it's a price opinion. They can take it or leave it. Well, Scott, Todd Sachs was in here the other day and he found a number on Zillow, a Zestimate, that was above this one. I think I'm going to go with him. I mean, this is insanity to me, but the realities are this was like shooting fish in a barrel during the bubble. I saw more and more agents. I mean, and I'm a pretty good salesman. I've gotten many listings just right out of the gate. Hey, let me come over and see the house. First thing first, let me come see the house and have a conversation and get the listing without having to go through a big listing presentation or competing with it. But that's not always the case, and that's not the way I learned. But in this bubble environment, you're absolutely right. Because, you see, here's the thing. People usually look up the estimated value of their home, and a lot of times it's close. And a lot of times I always say you never let your seller set the price. But an agent will always let the seller set the price. Why? Because they don't want to lose the listing, because they want to go on Instagram and show off my new listing. Now, we're seeing more and more properties stuck on the market, even like our super chat or somebody had mentioned one of our questions. What's up with these listings? Listing removed, back on, different price. Listing removed again. I don't know, maybe the agent got fired and they got a new agent. Maybe they pulled the listing. I saw one today I was looking at. This price history was so long, and I always tell people, we look at Zillow on my channel all the time and blow it apart. Price history. Price history is the tail in the tape. Do we have somebody chasing the market? An agent that let their seller set the price? Probably. If they're stuck on the market, then they remove the listing, come back on. Sometimes at a higher price. I'm like, what are you thinking? You couldn't get sold at this price. You removed it and came back on at an even higher price. Like, who's driving the car at this listing? So yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic, and agents are getting a rude awakening. I always say you never want an agent in worse shape than their clients. And there's a lot of agents about to be in a worse shape than their clients. Now, Todd and myself, hustler. I do property management. I own and operate Real estate commissions for me are not how I base my cost, or not what I use for my cost of living. Other income, investment income, that's what allows me to be on YouTube, warning people. If I had to rely on commissions only, I would be here cheerleading. Hey, did you guys hear about the new 1% down program from Zillow? That's what I would be doing. So, you got to be really careful. Now, anytime there's a real estate bubble, historically, new agents pile in, right? Makes sense. It looks like a great job, easy. In a bubble environment, it kind of is. But now these agents went out and financed new Teslas, new houses at the top on artificial 2-year blip on the radar income from stimulus era sales that are going away. They're in trouble. So you're going to see desperation coming out of these agents. You'll be able to smell it. You will smell desperation. I would say they got commission breath. They'll tell you whatever you need to hear to get your listing.
Commission breath.
That's what you're up against out there, friends. That's why Todd's channel.
That's new. I like that.
That's like puppy breath.
I love blowing it apart.
The
It's like a sport for me. Going on to Zillow with my channel, we do it all the time, and just blow apart listings. Oh my God, look at this one. I get emails all the time from my subscribers. Oh my God, Scott, look at this one I found. It's crazy. We always like the property descriptions. Give me a short. You only have a few seconds to capture somebody. If you have a property description a mile long, it's like reading a novel. Like, you lost me after the first paragraph. You have 3 paragraphs. You're overselling the house. You're chasing the market. You came on too high. Your rent range, your cost to carry is way above its rent range. It doesn't pencil out. Like, we just blow them apart for sport. And we're educating a lot of people how to look at Zillow the right way. Because Zillow's going to sugarcoat it. They're going to smoke screen you. They want you to click request tour. That's all Zillow wants. Why? So they can sell that click to a desperate agent that needs a sale. That's how Zillow makes money, selling clicks back to agents.
Yeah. I tell people, and it's, there are still people buying houses, obviously, right? And what I tell agents now is, look, there are a ton of buyers out there that have been sidelined. Now's the time to educate, not the time to cheerlead. I mean, if you tell somebody, what I hate hearing happen is, it was so much FOMO where people are saying, you know what, if you don't buy now, it's only going to go up. You're making a big mistake, blah, blah, blah. If it goes up, it goes up. If you're not ready to buy now, you're not ready to buy now. I basically say, look, to the agents, put your buyers in 3 basic categories, right? You have buyers right now, and Scott, you know that. They're going to buy. They don't care. They have plenty of money. They have cash. They want it. They want it now. They don't care what the interest rates are. They don't care what the price is. The property, location, right? It's fine. Satisfy those buyers, but have a conversation and make sure they're ready. Then you have your buyers that I believe, are the ones that are the largest percentage that have been sidelined. I think that they'll buy within the next 12 months. If I had to say, hey, look, do I think things are going to happen in 12 months? I do. I don't know that everybody's going to find a place in 12 months, but I think that now that we're hearing Jay Powell, Fannie Mae, all these people wake up, realize that, hey, look, the house needs work. It's okay. It's a 35-year-old house, but let's be realistic about it. Let's make sure that we ask for repairs. I think that there's a group of buyers out there that within the next 12 months will get the home that they've been waiting for if they want to buy. And then I think that the other buyers that we have to really make sure that we're paying attention to, that we don't repeat the same mistakes, is the Gen Zs out there, and maybe they're still, they're about to graduate, or they just graduated college, last year, and they're getting their jobs, their first-time jobs, and they're, thinking that rent's a dirty word and things like that. I think that this group is another group. It's important that we continue to educate, because it's not just that we're in a historical bubble that I don't think is going to stay this way. We can continue to go on this cycle. But I think that we're in for the correction that everybody's been waiting for. What that looks like, who knows how bloody it gets? We'll have to wait and see. But let's kind of take a look, and Scott, because I do want to ask you some questions, and and guys, and Scott does have to jump out of here, and if he has to leave before we get your questions answered, we'll hang out a little bit and answer some of these comments and questions. And I'm sure Scott will come back to the channel. If you guys are calling Scott out here, where you really want him to answer something for you, go ahead and make sure you say Scott in your comment. And then, whether it's during the show or after the show, and Scott's good about following up. But definitely check him out on his YouTube channel. But before he gets away, I want to ask him his opinion on this National Association of Realtors lawsuit that is pending. There are buyers, and Scott, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but let me educate you on it. So we have two sellers that, do you know about it?
No,
Okay.
I do not.
So we have two sellers in the one case. There's two cases right now. One is smaller than the other. Of course, the lawyers are waiting for this case to clear the way, because then the bigger, lawsuit can come later. But there's always the big question of who's paying the commission, right? And, and when you're talking about buyer agents, buyer representation, things like that, and guys, for you, the audience, will clarify this a little bit, try and clean it up. But what happened is we have, and I'm not an attorney, and I'm reading the same documents that you can read, and I'll try and get my understanding on it as accurate as I can. But we had two sellers that basically had to discount their price, and this goes back to 2015. So this is not a new case. This isn't something that just came about during the rush. But in 2015, there was a property that was sold, and the sellers had to negotiate a $10,000 discount in order for the buyer to buy the home. Now, we could sit there and analyze that, but we sidebar that. But what happened was the sellers were upset because they said, we're paying the buyer's agent to negotiate against us. And then you have to sit there as an agent and analyze it. And I know that the broker agreement says that the seller doesn't actually pay the buyer's agent. The seller pays the broker, and the broker cooperates with the buyer's broker, which is how the buyer's agent gets paid. Now, buyers, on the contrary, say, well, we're paying the commission, not the seller, because the seller's, tacked it in the price somewhere is the price that they'll take, and that includes the commission. And there wouldn't be any commission involved if we didn't buy the house. Scott, who pays the commission?
Seller.
Explain.
Well, because that's just the industry standard. I mean, seller pays commissions. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a byproduct now of this is what happens now. Like you said, when you get too many cooks in the kitchen, you've complicated the transaction beyond belief. The forms that we use to orchestrate a real estate deal are...
Scott, let me stop you 1 second and see. I'm hearing a whole bunch of static. I don't know if it's... Maybe Joe, you could say.
I think it could be on your microphone. I think it's his microphone on his earpiece.
He just disappeared into the light. But this is a big question. And, as Scott's saying, the seller, pays the commission, but it does raise, I see all the parts, the moving parts to it, on the legal aspect of it, 100% the seller is paying the commission. But in most cases, I'm sure that, there's plenty of cases where the buyers pay commission because the seller's not offering a commission. There's in a case of maybe even a for sale by owner. But the question is, and this is really what the argument is, and what they're really pushing for here, as I can tell you, is that they're saying that because of the current way that the commission structures are structured, and I'm not saying this is the allegations, is that the buyers have an unfair advantage because they're paying more for the house. And I can take it one more layer, which really gets deep here, and say, if the buyer knew right up front, because the argument is a lot of buyers will tell their clients, according to this allegation, I don't know it to be true, our agents better not be saying this, but a lot of the argument is that the buyers agent tells them that the buyer doesn't have to pay for their commission. They say, oh, you don't have to pay it. It's free. Maybe there's a fee that goes to the broker, whatever. I don't know. Everybody's broker commissions are negotiable, 100% negotiable. Buyer and seller commissions are negotiable. My point is that the buyers feel that they don't pay the commission. And then there's the argument that the buyer says, well, if I didn't have my buyer agent, could I buy the house for less money? And the answer is possibly, because we have agents on the flip side of it. I've had them myself where my buyers who are under contract go into an open house to look at a house, and the agent tells them, the listing agent who's sitting in the open house says to my buyers under buyer agency contract, do you have an agent? And they said, we do. Why do you ask? In this scenario, they said, well, if you got rid of your agent, this has absolutely happened. If you got rid of your agent, there's something called a variable rate commission, which means that I would take less and the seller would discount that off of the price of the house if you got rid of your agent. Well, what did they do? This was on a Super Bowl Sunday, guys, and it happened to my agent who called me up and said, I got a problem. This listing agent just told my client this. She was upset. But the bigger thing is the buyers, our client under buyer agency contract, wanted to know how much money that would be. What is the price? The agent was referring to at this Sunday open house. What was the price of discount that if I didn't have you, that I would get from the seller? I called the agent. I was upset. I called the agent who I knew, and she's a shark, does very well. And she said, I absolutely did ask the question. 100%. I told them that there could be a financial benefit if they ditched you, your agent. Not saying that they could legally, but I told them, and I called my attorney that next day, which was Monday, and my attorney said, at least in Maryland, that the agent was 100% right. She could absolutely say that there was a variable rate commission, and that if a buyer didn't have an agent, that there could be some type of financial compensation for it. This is the argument here. This is what's coming out. You know, I know what the contracts say, but these are the arguments that are being asked. So, Scott, you said that the seller pays the commission. And my question is, how?
Well, I mean, this happens all the time. You know, these people just got caught potentially, influencing the deal in this way. And it was basically, violating the code of ethics. And so, like, for example, I've held an open house. When you hold an open house, I've held so many open houses. You hold an open house to the public, people come wandering in. Hey, welcome to the house, you guys. Take a look around. My name's Scott. If you have any questions, please let me know. Hey, Scott, they toured, come back. Hey, we're thinking about writing an offer, or, we love the house. We're interested. We don't have an agent. If we use you as our agent, will you reduce your commission? Yeah, I'm sure I could do something like that for you. Because like you said, usually you split commissions, buyer side, seller side. Now, typically what I tell clients is a lot of clients don't know they're about to get double-ended by the deal. A lot of buyers just wander in and, do you have an agent? No, great. Well, I can represent you, and this is, it's signed here, and, we'll do dual agency, blah, blah, blah. So, some buyers will ask you, hey, I don't have an agent. I can get an agent, but if I don't get an agent, will you reduce? What will you do for me? Will you reduce commissions? Will you give me a credit? Will you do something? What will you do for me? And so, our job is to review offers. With our first fiduciary duty is to our seller, if that's who we've got our contract with. So if I've got an offer and it just happens to be my only offer, and they didn't have an agent, hey, I got us an offer. They didn't have an agent. I'm going to represent them too, if that's all right with you. And usually, it's always breaking up again.
Yeah, you were good there for a minute, and then you started crackling.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that's something that happens periodically, and somebody crossed the line and got caught in this instance, and now it's a big old ugly lawsuit.
Yep. Yep. And again, I mean, look, guys, look, we're just trying to talk about what's going on there. We don't talk about as brokers to brokers. We don't talk about rates and things like that, because that would be in violation of antitrust. Commissions are 100% negotiable, just like Scott is alluding to. It doesn't mean that you're going to get what you're looking for, but there is no fixed fee. There is no fixed rate. There is no industry average. I hate when people say that. If I hear an agent say that, it makes me cringe, because I'm like, look, you're going to get in trouble. You can't say the going rate. This is what the going rate is. That is not allowed. If an agent's telling you that this is the going rate, tell them they're wrong. But the big question is, another thing, Scott, and the lawsuit that is outlined, with some of the allegations, is they say that there are things like the way that the system is right now, that that buyers' agents could potentially steer their buyers away from lower paying commission homes. And I think that's terrible. I mean, my hand to God, I always put my clients' needs in front of my own, and that's what a fiduciary is. That's what I do. But I mean, we know human nature, and I wonder about that. I hope that doesn't happen. But I don't know what the answer is to that. We're not going to dive down to that. But that's one of the allegations, is that that a buyer's agent could perhaps do something like that. And then the other thing is that you have to subscribe to be a realtor in order to gain access to these properties if they're using electronic lockboxes, because you can't get electronic lockbox access, like freely access properties without codes, and that that's frowned upon too. So I think there's going to be big changes, my friend. I think I think one of the biggest things, public awareness is huge. I think that we need, transparency. I think that, like anything else, we should be held to a high standard when we're dealing with, one of the largest financial transactions that anybody makes in their entire life. And whether, the industry agrees with me on that, or fellow agents agree with me on that or not, I don't want to become part of the problem. I think that, we need to be, as professionals, part of the solution. And if you're agents out there, look, you need to stand up and own the fact that we do have a responsibility to be transparent with our clients, and make sure that we're not doing things that could be unethical. Because I think if you are, and if you have a history of that, as these lawsuits come unfolded, I think that it's going to be interesting times. Mm-hmm. Anyway, my friend, what else you got? What else you got for us?
I have a question for Scott.
Awesome.
There's one right here. Scott is in Santa Barbara, California. Is he seeing any fallout yet from the industry strikes throughout Hollywood? Forced selling, short sales? Why don't you give an update, Scott, on what's going on there?
Yeah, actually I am. I'm seeing more and more big Hollywood stars starting to dump their properties, and a lot of them are coming to market with their properties. I don't think Hollywood and celebrities, have enough. There's enough of them to really take a big bite. But sales are down here in Santa Barbara. I always say Santa Barbara anytime I'm talking to somebody, about market conditions here and where I'm at is, we're typically the last to get hit and the first to rebound. And like Todd was saying, I deal with a lot of clients that have a lot of money and their financial fitness is high, and I have no problem helping them buy houses right now. A lot of them just want to protect their money, get it out of the banks. Like, I don't care if the thing goes down. I trust real estate going down. I'll be happier dealing with that than my money, not safe in a bank, some kind of bank run or something going on. But yeah, I'm seeing, I think I did one recently where Jim Carrey, we blew apart his listing. He was on the market selling his house. I know that Mark Wahlberg selling his $55 million mansion. Not necessarily that it's in Santa Barbara. A lot of these are in Beverly Hills and down in Hollywood Hills. But yeah, we're seeing some of that. Definitely, we're seeing it. It's nothing like insane, but it's happening. Definitely, there's a lot of, like we talked about, economical, social, political climates are what we're contending with now. It's a really interesting time to be alive. This is a really interesting time to be a realtor, a real estate agent, because it was just the most unorganic growth that I'd ever seen, that anybody had seen. This was a really unique bubble, something like we've never seen. This is, in fact, uncharted territory, even to the point where Hollywood is now entered the swim.
Yeah. We're losing you again, man. You're crackling it. You're crackling it.
Oh man, this might be my time to tap out. And
hey, look, before you do, I got one more question for you. What's going on with the homelessness population in California, man? I mean, I heard that there are more people that can't afford. They actually have jobs and live in their cars because they can't afford housing. I mean, what's going on with that, Scott?
Yeah, well, a third of the nation's homeless population reside in California. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people living in their cars and vans. And I deal with clients. Yeah, with jobs. I have a client right now. He's got his whole family in an RV. He can buy. He's sitting this one out in an RV. But the challenge with the homeless situation, San Francisco, and Seattle is, throw a dart at a metro and you're hitting somebody with a homeless issue. But the challenge is we're throwing money at this with programs, but we're just putting fuel on the fire. If you furnish the gutter for these people, they're not going to climb out of the gutter. You're making it more comfortable for them. So this whole handout climate happened through stimulus for the everyday Joe and Jane, all the way to the homeless population as well. Santa Monica, cesspool. Here in Santa Barbara, spiking. People living in cars. It's the clear breaking point. So yeah, we've got a big, ugly issue with the homeless population, and unfortunately we're trying to spend our way out of it, and all it's done is increased the homeless population. It's clearly not working. You got to make it more uncomfortable for people. But yeah, it is cost of living. A lot of just everyday people are forced out of their apartment and into cars to try to make this thing work. It is interesting, a really interesting time. We've talked about this before as well. With lockdowns, service sector, blue-collar jobs were the ones sat at home, or tech industry, remote workers were able to work. Well, now the flip has kind of occurred. White-collar tech workers and remote workers are being dragged back to the office after buying away from the office. They're running on fumes. And then now you can get a job at flipping burgers. The service sector is the one now scrambling for workers. The blue-collar incomes won't keep up with white-collar cost of living. So we've got a really interesting thing playing out right now, and it's contributing to the homeless population.
Yeah. Well, I know you got to get out of here, brother, but look, I really appreciate you being on here, Scott. I love our friendship, man, and, I love what you do on both your real estate channel and serving the industry. I know you're a professional. And guys, if you haven't done so already, check out Scott Wolter's, there it is, YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Comment to him. He'll check the comments. Any final thoughts there, buddy?
Yeah, and final thoughts I come to as a friend, as a content creator, as a real estate guy, wants to see you not only win in real estate, win in life. Understand the waters we're swimming in now are shark infested. Jerome Powell has spoken. Fannie Mae has spoken. Zillow has spoken. A lot of people now are giving us warning signs. It's really important to insulate yourself, expect the unexpected. You'll be much more equipped to tolerate whatever's coming if you can at least halfway expect it. Don't rule anything out right now. We put ourselves in another real estate bubble. It's clearly reversing course. Stay tuned as we continue to heat map, temperature check monitor it every step of the way for you guys so we can make smart choices moving forward. Things are changing. Todd, Melissa, thank you so much for having me on. Always a pleasure to be with you two.
You got it, my friend. We'll be in touch.
Thank
Talk to
you so
soon.
much, Scott.
All right, I'll see you later.
Okay.
Sounds
All right,
good.
guys. We'll answer some questions. We'll, Melissa, I'm sure you flagged a couple here. We'll try and answer some of your comments and questions.
Yeah.
Maybe for the next 10 minutes or so. And Travis, Real Estate Mindset. We
Travis.
appreciate you, brother. Thanks for the super chat.
Thank you.
If you guys, Real Estate Mindset, you know, I'm sure if you haven't heard from him, you could check his channel out. We, we have an amazing community, this YouTube community, and a lot of people, they think that we're just looking for clicks and things like that, and that there's so much money in YouTube. You have to have hundreds of millions of views, certainly, millions of views. That's not why a lot of YouTubers are, consistently putting out content. Is to educate, is to get earn your business one day. We have an amazing broker network at Sachs Realty. If you're not here in Maryland, we're only licensed in Maryland. We have an amazing broker network of agents and lenders and title companies, and you can always reach out to us. Send us an email. We can point you to an agent in your town. We have a brand new website that we are working out the bugs and things like that. It is live, but we're adding agents, our referral network to it every day. We also have a store that you guys could check out. We just, in fact, got some today. We had a delivery of our really nice, cool keychains.
Yeah.
There, Joe's pulling it up here. But you can buy these
You
shirts
too
that
could
we're,
have a quarter zip.
sport around in some quarter zip.
Yeah.
Really cool gear. And
Yeah.
but anyway, let's answer some questions.
Yeah, so I want to go to the poll, but we had a question here. How long do you think it will take to get pricing back to pre-pandemic levels? I just want to go to, and you guys, the poll is at the top of the chat. You can just scroll all the way to the top of the
We've
chat.
had some good votes on that.
But-
652 votes.
Yeah.
The question was, will home prices and rents decline to pre-pandemic levels? Most of you say no. 52% out of 654 votes. 52% say no, they won't. 44% say yes. 4% says that they don't care. I just figured I'd plug that in there to see if we would get anybody that says they don't care whether prices go up or down
Yeah,
or
what do
not.
you think, Todd?
But anyway, look, I don't think that home sale prices, the prices of homes for sale, will go back to pre-pandemic levels. I don't believe that. What Jay Powell is really talking about is housing services, things that, the costs that go along with the housing industry, and rents, primarily shelter inflation. I think that's where they're really trying to push the rents down to, because a lot of people are struggling right now and they need a place to live. I don't know what the answer is going to be, how they're going to do it. I do think that we are going to see further house price correction in homes for sale, but not 40, 50% discounts in home prices. I don't think we're going to see that. If we do see that from like what we saw in, depending on who you listen to, there was anywhere from, 10 to 22% home price depreciation during the '08 crisis, not 50% average price, depreciation. We saw 50, 60% price depreciation on houses that were destroyed, completely distressed, needing hundreds or $100,000 back then worth of work. Yes, those prices were at deep discounts, but that was a result of the foreclosures and the bank-owned, all the bank-owned properties, not just everyday, normal, homes for sale being priced 50%, off. So, I think if we got to that point, we'd have bigger issues in the economy or in society, where if we saw home prices crash across the board 40 or 50%. But to answer the question, I think that we're going to see probably somewhere in 2025 Maybe we'll be, stale for a period of time. Maybe we'll just see stagnant growth until we start to see wage growth, until we see interest rates come down. And then we may see, 3 to 5% home price appreciation in a decade, maybe, if I had to guess. I don't think we're going to see, prices just skyrocket again. I really don't think that the Fed is going to allow that, or that the secondary mortgage market will allow that, like they did before. We never had 2.75% or never had less than 4% 30-year fixed rate mortgages in the history of lending until the last decade or so, due to the housing market crash of '08.
And a lot of local thoughts on what's happening in people's market where they're living. In Atlanta, there are so many neighborhoods overrun with corporate landlords. It has made the local market almost impossible to break into for a first-time home buyer.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing, because we'll see if these, corporations continue to buy, these, corporate investors continue to buy at the same pace once things start to weaken or soften, or whether they back out of it and just stick to the multifamily or jump into the commercial space that's going to be collapsing here, as everybody predicts. Even the Fed's predicting, difficult times ahead with commercial real estate. The investors may start taking their money in that direction versus focusing on single family housing, because I think a lot of these investors will be able to buy office buildings and convert them to multifamily units or buildings. And I think that that's going to be a big attraction. So hopefully that'll be enough with the reduction in rents. It's not going to make it as inviting for these corporate investors to buy these single family homes. And maybe that will be an opportunity with some good loan programs to get some affordable housing for a lot of the buyers that have been, simply sidelined.
Yeah. I know in the beginning of the show, we talked about tax assessment on homes and the price of that going up. There was a question that came in. How can I prove my case to the county auditor? I am contesting my recent county appraisal for tax purposes, up 30%.
Yeah.
Dayton, Ohio, a city with 35%.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to contest the tax bills. I mean, I know a lot of people are trying; they're being turned down because simply the home prices are up. So when they're assessing you, it took a lot for the housing market crash of 2008 to where we started seeing property taxes come down. And what they had to do was prove that comparable sales were much lower than what they're being assessed. And, that took years to do. I don't think we're going to see it. No time soon.
Yeah, there was another one. What are your thoughts, Todd? Interest rates will continue to 10% by 2024.
Yeah, I think we may see interest rates hit 9% by the beginning of the year. Maybe into, January, February, we may see 9% mortgage interest rates. I think that, 10% would be pretty devastating. I think that would basically shut the market down. And not just, if you think about this won't just be for residential, because commercial typically is a couple points higher than residential. So that would mean if we were at 10%, we may see 12, 13, 14% commercial rates, which would crush our economy. Really would. It would be disastrous. So I don't know that we'll see 10%. Who knows? But I would doubt it. The banks are already being bailed out right now. That would cause so much more bailout, the need to bail out banks. And I don't think the Fed is trying to do that. Though the Fed rate doesn't directly affect mortgage interest rates. In fact, it has nothing to do, when we're talking about the Fed raising rates, that has nothing to do with mortgage interest rates. Really, mortgage interest rates follow the 10-year Treasury. So when you have investors that are investing in a 30-year loan, they're looking at the 10-year Treasury. And as the 10-year Treasury goes up 4% or 5%, why would the investor, if they can get 4 or 5% on their money in a 10-year treasury bond, why would they invest in a long-term mortgage? The only way they would do that is if they made a lot more money than they would in a 10-year treasury. So that's why this secondary loan market is causing the rise of mortgage interest rates, because the federal government right now is actually doing quantitative tightening to their balance sheet. They're getting rid of, or as these mortgages are being fulfilled, they're not buying more mortgages. They're the ones that drove down the mortgage rates to stimulate the home sales back in the '08 crisis. They're the ones that dropped the interest rate and started offering 4% mortgage rates over the investor market, because they knew they had to. Investors didn't want to drop their rates. So the government said, look, we'll come in, we'll give cheap mortgages, mortgage-backed securities, we'll invest in that. And that's what happened. And we have so many of those on the balance sheet right now. And that's part of what the Fed is doing, is getting rid of those. So until we see the Fed buying more mortgage-backed securities, we're not going to see the interest rates drop, because these investors want money. Mm-hmm. They want to get paid for investing in a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. All right, let's take one more.
Okay, one more. I'm just going to touch on Airbnb, because it's always fun to just kind of throw in a short-term rental.
I know. You like to jab me with the Airbnb comments.
Yeah, but here we go. Many of the Airbnb properties in remote areas will not easily find long-term renters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been said that Airbnb owners or short-term rental owners, their revenue has gone down because of the amount of competition, for one. How many people have gone into the business. I think that, a lot of people were thinking during the pandemic that it would be cool to own a house, a short-term rental, and a place to where they like to go. And there's certain allowances for, the IRS code to let you stay in your house while you're working on it or whatever, that you can actually go and stay there. So they thought this would be great. It would be novel. But then they realized it was a job, and they have to clean it, and it's expensive, and their fees are going up, and a lot of the neighborhoods and the associations are banning them. So a lot of people are stuck with a house in a neighborhood that they can no longer Airbnb. I know Dallas just did that. I think Fort Worth, the whole city of Fort Worth, doesn't allow Airbnbs. I know Baltimore City eliminated Airbnbs unless it's your primary residence. Right. So now these people that have these Airbnbs, they can't do it, and they're looking at something that they made really nice. So they put high-end amenities, high-end fixtures, and now they're looking at renting it or selling it and saying, well, if I put a renter in here, they're going to destroy it.
Right.
And now this, nice, posh Airbnb that's equipped with furniture, what am I going to do with it? So we're starting to see where a lot of people are putting them on the market.
Yeah. More to come on that subject, for sure.
Okay, guys, well, we thank you so much. If you like the video, you can hit the thumbs up and let Melissa and I and Scott know that you did. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please consider doing so now. Melissa, thanks again.
Thank you.
2 hours your evening.
2 hours tonight. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate all of you.
All right, guys. And until next time, see you soon.
See you soon.